I'll call it a confrontation with television host Abby Phillip. Did you go in assuming you were going to have a confrontation, or did it happen spontaneously?
Happened spontaneously.
Okay, let's watch. This is recently on CNN in prime time. Podcast legend Katie Miller, the Katie Miller podcast, versus CNN's Abby Phillip, a former Washington Post reporter. Roll that tape, please.
Wait, you have Jennifer Welch on your show very often, and you've never pushed back as she has called my husband a white nationalist.
Hold on.
That is no different than Nick Fuentes going on Tucker Carlson's show. It's not, and you should admit it.
Well, hold on. Wait, hold on. How is it anything similar? It's not remotely similar at all. Nick Fuentes sits around and says that he likes Hitler. How is that similar?
What does Katie have to do with it? What does she have to do with it? She has nothing to do with it. Literally nothing.
Scott, Katie is the person who just said to me that it is comparable to say that Nick Fuentes, who is literally a neo-Nazi, is the same as somebody, a liberal, who has an opinion, who is not a neo-Nazi.
They are not
a hateful opinion. The same.
How do you want? Excuse me. Just let's go back to this point one more time.
But
Nick
Katie,
Fuentes can espouse an opinion on Tucker Carlson's show.
It is not the same.
And he didn't push back the same way you didn't push back when someone called someone in my family a Nazi.
Hold on a second.
It's not different.
Hold on a second.
It's not.
If someone comes on this show and says, I love Hitler and I admire what he did, they would never, first of all, I would never invite them on the show and they would never be invited back. So those two things are not the same.
But yet you've gone on Jennifer Welch's podcast. It's the same thing.
All right. So, Katie, I mean, almost too obvious to say, but of course you were 100% right. Of course, it's exactly the same. A host sits by while someone says something beyond the pale and doesn't say anything about it. It's the same. Her attempt to make them different, whatever. So what happened immediately after that? Like when you went to break, did you have words with her? Have you talked to her since?
No, we haven't chatted since. It was incredibly awkward. I was actually just talking with somebody else this morning about this, but no, afterwards, she didn't speak to me. We had a polite conversation off air, just thank you for coming. But it was a noticeable change in demeanor around the table once you do that. I could tell that I've upset her. I could tell that she didn't like being called out on her own program, especially something in which I equated her to a Nick Fuentes and a Tucker Carlson, and who people she thinks are the end of the world as you know it, right? Because at the end of the day, she sat there and nodded along. As Jennifer Welch said, that Stephen was a Nazi Jew and a white nationalist. Yeah. She had on her program 4 times. Yeah. It's not a one-time occurrence.